Hey, welcome to Impress the Boss. I'm Catherine.
I'm Laurel.
And I'm Valerie.
Where we talk about how to stand out without working overtime. So this week on Impress the Boss, we are looking at the character of Bobson. So we're going to learn a little bit about Bobson. We're going to talk about a use case and then share some questions that you can consider this week about how to impress your boss and stand out. So Bobson is this play on Daniel-san from Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid. So all a movie that we loved watching growing up. And,
absolutely.
Something
Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off.
Exactly. So Daniel-san, Mr. Miyagi assigned him all these tasks that were very repetitive, very tactical to help him develop discipline. And that's really what Bobson represents. He's silent and stealth. He's very tactical. He gets things done. He's the type of guy that he may not speak often, but when he speaks, you definitely want to hear what he has to say. So
he definitely sounds like an Enneagram 6 to
totally
me.
an Enneagram
6 all the way.
Which brings up a good point, because that personality and Bobson really have a fight or flight tendency. So this could be a downside. So it could be, wow, there's a lot of conflict ahead of me. I'm either going to fight and be very intentional about where I fight, or I'm going to flight. I'm going to get out of there, right? So I think the thing for Bobson is to really know when to do what, because sometimes, as we learned in the Karate Kid, we're out of there, right? It's not time to fight, but sometimes it's time to push through, really go heads down and figure out a tactical way to execute. So Laurel, I think you have a real life example for us about Andrew.
Yes, we're going to talk about Andrew today. So Andrew is all of these characteristics that you just mentioned, both the good and the bad. He was somebody that is very appreciated for his expertise and his rationale of thought, the way that he, thoroughly thought things through within his environment and his organization. Just very much appreciated for the depth that he would go to, in his reasoning and processing of information and setting things up so that there was going to be, clearly success just based on proven principles and experiences. The struggles for Andrew in particular are exactly what you mentioned. The first one about fear is just this idea that fear would drive Andrew to a place where it caused him to pull back and to be thinking about I am so fearful. I'm just not even going to move forward. I'm not going to try. I'm going to, kind of just resort back into what is comfortable. So definitely a big issue for Andrew for sure. Second one for him was it also maybe stemmed from the fear, is just this slow to respond and slow to act, that he would just move in a manner that was, just slow things down and didn't really want to charge forward, and, wasn't really sure when it was appropriate for him to insert himself and to, to kind of push those great ideas and expertise and experience in a way that, would challenge the organization. So definitely had some challenges with that for sure. So kind of, as you said, the fight or flight absolutely came into play for Anthony. So for him, his path forward and what we're going to see in our standout tips this week is how to push forward when you aren't sure if you want to. And that was the approach that Andrew took for himself, of really pushing past that discomfort and finding ways for himself to be comfortable with the discomfort and to push himself forward in a way that he would fight for the things that were important to be fought for, and that he would take action when action needed to be taken, and not move so slowly or even freeze. I think the other one, fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. So just that, not moving at all. So he just really had to challenge himself to find the things that he believed in enough that he would actually take action on them and move them forward.
You said something to me. We were talking about a personal situation maybe 4 years ago that has stuck with me ever since. And I can't even remember the exact line, but we were talking about something where it was just such an uncomfortable position for me to be in. And you mentioned that you just have to live with the discomfort for the next year and a half. Like, just let it sit there, but be okay that it's there.
Yeah.
And that's just really stuck with me, that we don't always have to have everything resolved. We don't always have to necessarily like fight or flight, but we do have to sometimes like live with not everything being completely okay.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of the example that you just said.
Yeah, definitely. We find that growth when we're allowing ourselves to live in that tension of the in between.
The in between.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. So, what are the signs then of a Bob Daniel son? And if you're listening to this today and you're wondering, am I a Daniel son? Then ask yourself these questions. Do you know of times in the past where you did not fight for what you wanted, that you kind of sat back and you took more of that passive role? And do you have the tendency of being more passive and not straightforward? And with that, do you have people come to you often and ask you, if you are a passive person? In reality, you're really not. You're just kind of sitting back because you're afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
And that's another question. Do you withhold saying things out loud, or withhold sharing your ideas or thoughts because you want to avoid that conflict? And another good question too is, do you have trouble figuring out when is the best time to speak, or when the best time is not to speak? And I think that is a self-awareness characteristic. I think that we all have a tendency of needing to have. And it's like, I know with myself sometimes, it's like, when do I speak or when I don't speak? And you don't want to speak at the wrong time. But sometimes with this personality, you have to know when to speak, to fight to get what you want, and not take that passive role.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening to a little of our thoughts on Bob's son. If you have any ideas or experiences to share, we'd love to hear about those on social, #ImpressTheBoss, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you listening in. If you'd like to learn more about the Bobs, go to impresstheboss.com, where you will see all our Bob characters and hopefully find one that you relate to as well. While you're there, subscribe to be part of our crew and you'll get our free tool download. Also, follow us on social, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook for our daily standout tips. Thanks for joining, and until next time, Bob's out.